I really hope they stick to making really good lore compared to Diablo 3.
The story of Diablo takes place, and it's the battleground for the souls of humanity and the fight between angels and demons.
Sanctuary is a vast world, and there'll always be something new in every area, like hordes of enemies, safe haven towns, resources to gather, events, quests, and more.
We wanted to bring Diablo 4 artistically more back towards like Diablo 2, the much darker style.
Yes,
very
good
macabre.
choice.
The artists and designers have had so much fun working on it, and it's just been a joy to create for us.
How would the people of
I'm definitely
Sanctuary
happier
show their world?
with the
What kinds of
direction they went in
art
with Diablo
would
4
they use to describe the world? One of the
compared to
things we really
D3.
wanted to do was make the game feel like a painting.
Everything was built by
Don't say that word, or don't say those words. Feel like a painting. I know what they mean. I know what they mean. They do mean more of like, you can tell, especially based on what they just showed us, that little they want it to feel like this kind of painting, whereas when they said we want it to feel like a painting back in Diablo 3, it looked more like brush strokes. And again, I've said it before, I wasn't that bothered by the art style in Diablo 3. It was mostly the fact that everything was extremely well lit and they didn't do light radius and stuff like that, so everything just glowed in the dark. But yeah, that phrase, like a painting, just gives me kind of like a Vietnam flashback, you know what I mean?
everything was built by a wonderful group of people who love Diablo as much as you do.
I like the funky little set that they've made for themselves.
We have 5 unique zones.
Each of the regions has its own kind of flavor and ambient life.
We take a lot of influence from what our concept artists give us, and I know they take a lot of influence from real life.
There's Kyrgyzstan, which is the sort of desert.
It's amazing with its sweeping sand
It does look
dunes.
cool.
Skaz Glen, which is inspired by Scotland. Fractured Peaks is inspired by the Carpathian Mountains.
The dry steppes is sort of our mountainous desert region.
Back to the dry
Hawazar is
steppes.
the swampy region of the south. Whether you're on a mount or on foot, it's a joy to go from one region to the next. Also,
Ooh,
the
that's pretty.
region transitions are really beautiful and stunning to see.
Making sure that it felt sort of geologically true was really important. If you walk from Fractured Peaks into Hawazar, you'll cross all of these waterfalls caused by snow melt.
There's a
You
lot
can
of
actually see the
verticality.
Snow melting in Fractured Peaks through waterfalls, entering into Hawazar and entering the large basin that fills Hawazar with all of the swamp water.
We have all the different environments in the overworld, and we tried to make sure there was some parity with those in the dungeons. We have dungeons that are flooded, and there's like moss everywhere. It
That
very
does
much
look cool.
fits in with
That looks
that
very, very
Scotland
cool.
environment. Kyrgyzstan
Ooh,
is
I like
desert,
the
so we have
statue breaking
dungeons
apart.
filled with sand. All the dungeons are particularly placed to make sure that they feel like this is a thing that could be in this part of the world. It
There's
fits here, it
darkness, you
belongs
can't see
here.
what's around here. That's such a huge difference
We
compared to Diablo
definitely
3.
redesigned some of the monsters. For example, the Fallen family has gone through a major redesign to make them feel more grim, a little scarier, a little darker, to match the tone of Diablo 4.
I think that's a fair
Families are
choice.
a way to describe the group of monsters that create a combat experience. So a lot of times there'll be brutes and swarmers, melee or casters, and that's the term that we use to
I hope the
sum up
Fallen still have like that
vampires,
personality of
drow,
being a little bit
undead.
dopey.
And all of them have unique abilities.
Recognition.
But they all synchronize together. They bolster each other and improve how they work on the battlefield, so that every time you fight a pack of, let's say, Goatmen, it's always different.
We wanted to make sure that the monster families all felt like they fit in their environments.
I
And
like
so
a jacket.
Our creature team
Can I-
did
can I
a
have
really
your
good
jacket?
job of making these different versions of them that have adapted to their environment. There's snowy goatmen and fractured peaks in some of the colder areas versus lightning goatmen are in dry steppes and kind of the more arid
Goatmen
areas.
look cool.
Hawazar has a lot of poison spiders.
Each of the regions has its own kind of flavor, and it's pretty exciting to discover.
We have some really cool new snake men, the Nangari. We've seen snake men in Diablo before, but
That looks gnarly.
these guys are just really twisted amalgamations of multiple snake heads, even human body parts. We have skeletons, we have undead, we have ghosts, all the things that you would expect.
I
to
hope the
find in
fights are a
Diablo.
bit more like
Spiders have been around in Diablo for
cool and action orientated.
Cool new twist.
It's a giant spider that attaches to a corpse and then puppets it at you. And
The
when you
spider
kill
enemy
it,
is
it
gonna
explodes
ruin
with
so many
tons of
people's
baby
lives,
spiders,
especially the ones
and
that
then
like
those little spiders come after you, and I
embody,
feel slightly guilty about
or
traumatizing
literally in the
people.
bodies of people.
We also have wildlife, deer, snakes, bugs, dogs. You can pet the dogs, by the way.
So many people asked to pet the dog.
Ooh, pet the dog.
It was actually a lot of hard work to figure out how to pet that dang dog.
Mate, show more respect to the dog.
You have have so many activities that you might run into. It could be a stronghold, it could be side quests, you might have key dungeons to do, there could be bounties to pick up, you might encounter a world boss, you might encounter an invasion.
I am intrigued to see how hard the world bosses are.
Longer, sort of narrative heavy side quests, and we have some shorter side quests, so you never feel like you're always doing the same thing.
I just want to know how they scale the difficulty, considering it's a world boss.
I was able to build a quest where you actually get to go to those places. You get to go to the town. You get to go inside the chapel. And I work with some incredible dungeon designers to build
Back where it all began.
From the cinematic. You're going to get to go across the bridge that you saw to the actual room.
So do we go back to Tristram? Because I assumed that was Tristram.
Super excited to have players see it.
Where the
Sometimes
meteor
it's kinda
fell.
nice to just walk places, because that's a lot of the times when you see these little events.
You might find a demonic altar that you need to feed your blood to summon demons to then defeat for all of their loot. You might find a ghost child who's trying to find the remains of their parents, and you have to protect them.
I'm in two minds about that. Escort quests annoy the hell out of me.
And it has its own story,
especially if they're really slow.
Art that sort of tells a very specific story about this location, and those stay unlocked permanently once you've beaten back the darkness.
We did a lot of figuring
I think
out
when the
the
beta
balance
comes along,
between
I'll
how
probably
much
be trying the
space do
rogue
we
first.
need for
I'll
players
eventually
to
play
through
all the
these
characters
dungeons versus
realistically.
how much space do
I
we
think
need
the
to make
rogue's gonna be
my favorite is this one called
my
Endless
first character.
Gates. It's got these teleporters, and these teleporters actually take you to other dungeons. So you'll end up in a cave, a crypt, or one of the ancients. And every time you go in, it's designed to change.
And there's dozens of villages and
That looks
towns
really
that you
cool.
will run into.
The cities and towns are designed to be hubs. They're havens. They're places where you can find other players. They're good places to do all of your usual inventory management.
Each region has its main city that you can get lots of side quests and lots of activities.
We've really crafted the world to feel like there's always something just around the corner to find.
I hope there is
Diablo
always
4, you
something
actually
around
get
corner to find.
walk Sanctuary.
It's a massive place.
Some of the
You can
beta testers, the
seamlessly
ones that were under NDA, were like, yeah, there's kind of a lot of open empty space.
It's a very immersive experience.
What I love about it is that you can go in a direction and you might be searching for a particular quest or an item, and you'll come across a stronghold that you haven't explored before. You'll come across dungeons that
You'll
have
come across a lady in a
legendary
bubble.
affixes, or you might discover a side quest that you didn't even know about that fills in some bit of lore that you actually were interested in. There's any number of things that can happen along the road to your destination, and that's what I love about having this fast-paced.
There are tons of
I'm
different
very
types of
intrigued about
events in
the
world.
Necro,
It's
because
been
their
created
build
to
relies on
feel
what
full of
summons you
things to
have or
encounter,
don't
full of
have.
secrets to discover, full of characters to interact with.
Like,
full of
not having a
stories to
summon can
find.
actively give you a bonus in a certain way.
These altars to Lilith that if you can find them, they will give you a permanent buff to all of your characters across the game. There are tons of them hidden everywhere.
I like that, and the reason I like that is because one of the problems that a lot of people have with, like, say, Path of Exile is once you've made an alt, the chore of leveling up another character is just sometimes a bit much. Like, especially if you're not someone who plays in, like, 10,000 hours, like most streamers who play Path of Exile, where you can just go, oh yes, I've made another character in 4 hours and got into the end of Act 10 in PoE. So by doing this thing where you have basically stat boosts to all your characters after doing your first character, it just means that when you level an alt, it's a lot quicker. Plus you get the free boost that everyone will have once you level your first character, which is also nice. But then again, for any subsequent characters like me, I'm going to probably play all 5 classes at least once and probably make multiple with different builds. So being able to level really quickly, get some extra stats that help me level quickly and things like that, that's actually like a huge like bonus.
We also have these
In my
massive
opinion.
world bosses that are so big the camera actually has to pull out even further, and you're going to have an opportunity to fight these bosses with your friends or with strangers to take down these huge world bosses.
And the team has done just an incredible
I do
job
wonder if they're
making
going to let
Sanctuary
people
a
zoom
world
out
worth
this
exploring
much
and a world worth
anyway,
investing yourself in.
because I imagine that's going to be something that people want. Because it's in the game and they can already, well, they can see it in the world bosses. They're like, well, just let us zoom out on all screens, kind of thing. So I can imagine that being something people want. That was cool. Like, I think when it comes to Diablo 4, I'm hoping they've learned the lessons from Diablo 3. There were things like Diablo 3 was by all means one of the best selling games in the world. You can't deny that. You can't say it is an objectively bad game. It just wasn't quite what the core audience of Diablo players really wanted. And that's why it had a very small hardcore, and I mean hardcore as in like regularly plays audience, in comparison to like Path of Exile that has a returning audience every season, every league. So hopefully they can nail down the lore, they can nail down the live service aspect, and yeah, it won't be as complex as Path of Exile. We already know that. Anyone who thinks it might be, get rid of that concept from your brain now. It's not going to happen. It's definitely going to be as casual, or a lot more casual. Hopefully not quite as much as D3, because I think that was one of the reasons a lot of people dropped off. But if the campaign is at least fun and relies on that huge amount of lore that Diablo actually has, that was written in the books and stuff like that, that would be fantastic. And hopefully no more really annoying like Asmodans and Diablos that are just like talking through the entire act, telling you complete bullshit you don't care about, like annoying taunts. And hopefully no like silly quests where a butterfly demon kills an iconic character and shit like that. Hopefully it's just really well written, really dark. And I'm hoping the side quests are interesting and not just like, you have to escort the child kind of thing. But we'll see. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to it. I'm optimistic, but in a slightly cynical way, if you know what I mean. I don't know how best to phrase that, but we'll see. We'll see.